Hi, welcome to Early Adopter, the podcast where we help AI become your unfair advantage. I'm Jess.
And I'm Kyle.
I'm a marketing executive, and I'm coming at this more from a business perspective. I've led teams, I've launched campaigns, and I've worked with major multinational corporations. And I'm actually here to focus on what matters for your day-to-day business needs.
And I'm the tech and data one. I've built AI tools, data systems, and automation engines for startups and enterprises. I'm here to help demystify the technology and show you how it works under the hood. Each week, we break down one AI concept, tool, or trend. We explain what it is, why it matters, how it applies to your business, and how to avoid the common traps. And we'll give you some use cases along the way.
So whether you're a small business owner, a professional looking to optimize your workflows and increase your productivity, or you're just curious about how to use AI without getting overwhelmed, you're in the right place. So let's get into it.
Absolutely. I'm excited for the second episode.
I know, me too. I can't believe it's our second episode. So first of all, the response to episode 1 has been incredible. We've had so many messages from listeners who've already started experimenting with the tools we've discussed. And actually, before I forget, we have to do a shout out to my mom, because we shouted out your mom last week, and my mom listened and is playing around with ChatGPT. So I have to give her credit. She'll kill me if I say her age. So let's not do that.
Absolutely. Definitely, we've gotten a lot of commentary from our friends and family, so we appreciate all of you listening to this. As we kind of find our structure and find our voice, we really appreciate everyone logging in, learning about AI, and kind of breaking into this crazy hype train that we've got going on.
Exactly. Well, so how's your week been since we recorded?
It's been busy. Like I said, I mean, I feel it's been great to just have everyone kind of come out of the woodwork and tell me what they think is working. My cousin, trying Midjourney out with some interesting results. We'll, I think, go through it at some
The
point.
results were amazing.
It definitely identifies something that we'll go through in the coming weeks around prompt engineering and how to get the most out of it. It's very important that, what you feed into the AI, bad data in or bad prompt in, bad data out. So we'll definitely cover that. But how's your week been, Jess?
It's been pretty quiet. I've had a nice, quiet, long weekend because we have a 3-day weekend over here in the UK as well. I've got a very hectic June with 3 back-to-back conferences, 2 in London and 1 in the south of France. So I'm just trying to take it easy before that all kicks off, because that's going to be an intense couple of weeks. And actually, you will be at one of those conferences, won't you? I will see you in person. We'll try and record an in-person episode when you're here in London in a couple of weeks.
If anyone's in London Tech Week, hit us up. We'll be there. I'll be back across the pond, as you will. Looking forward to it.
Right. Are we ready?
Yeah, let's jump in. So today's episode is all about going back to the beginning. Based on all your feedback, we realized there's a fundamental question we need to address first.
So a lot of you reached out saying, this all sounds great, but I actually don't even know where to start. So that's going to become the theme of a new series that we're launching.
So to all of you, welcome to Where Do I Even Begin? This is going to be our beginner focus series designed to cut down or break down what is AI and give you some clear, practical guidance without all the jargon. We're going to be running this for the next few weeks, or until we exhaust some of our ideas around this. So feel free to get in touch if you want us to cover anything in particular.
Yeah, I think that's important, because we're working a lot with the community or we'd love to build a community around this. And so we really want to hear from you. We want to get your feedback and to find out what you want us to focus on, because we've got lots of ideas, but actually we want to make sure that it's useful for our audience. Mm-hmm. So today's mission is going to be pretty simple. We're going to talk about some of the core tools that are what we commonly call AI. We'll show you where they fit into your workflow and help you take that first step. And then we've also got some pretty major news from Google that's really going to change the game for small businesses and entrepreneurs in ways that we've not seen before. So let's get started. So if we're going to talk about AI in a podcast, the elephant in the room is, what is an LLM? So something like ChatGPT is an LLM. And why is it such a big deal?
Absolutely. We want to explain what's actually powering tools like ChatGPT and other tools like it. We'll break into some of those and talk about them, why it matters for your business, and how understanding this one concept can help you use an AI tool more effectively. But before we do that, we need to rewind for a moment. As Jess kind of alluded to, AI is a broad umbrella term for any technology that enables machines to mimic human intelligence. There's a lot there, but let's break it down. So this is, learning from data, making decisions, recognizing patterns, or generating content like text, images, or audio. AI in the form of machine learning has been around for decades. It started with teaching computers to recognize patterns, like spotting fraud in credit cards. And you've been getting those credit card alerts for a long time. That was a lot of machine learning. Or predicting the weather. Maybe not as successful as a use case. But then came a big leap, and this is generative AI, where the machine doesn't just recognize patterns, it creates things or generates content like text and images.
Yeah, I think actually flagging that this has been around for a long time is really important because it's just become trendy, shall we say, or more mainstream is probably the better thing to call it.
And
But
if you start talking to really technical people, and we'll have some technical people here, you can get into the semantics of what is AI. So I think it's important to just see it as this broad term that now encompasses a lot of different components. So you don't get stuck in the mud of the semantics, and just see AI can now kind of include Gen AI like ChatGPT, machine learning, and a lot of other different types of tools and technologies.
right, but what our listeners probably just need to know about is generative AI. We just want to give a little bit of background. So
Yeah.
the big leap that Kyle mentioned earlier is generative AI. That's what led to LLMs, which stand for large language models. So that's the technology behind ChatGPT. The big aha moment there came in November 2022. So it's actually only been probably about 2.5 years, even though it feels like forever. OpenAI, which is the parent company for ChatGPT, opened ChatGPT to the public and it went viral almost immediately. Within 5 days, it had 1 million users. And today, over 400 million people use it every week, which is just a
Staggering.
mind-bogglingly large number. And it's really, as I'm sure everyone who is listening is aware, really reshaping how everything gets done, especially for smaller businesses. So here's the simplest way to think about it. Imagine having an incredibly well-read assistant who's read basically the entire internet. And when we say the entire internet, literally the entire internet. The models were trained on the entire web. So that's books, blogs, Reddit threads, anything you can think of will have been used as training data for better or worse, which is something that we definitely need to mention. There's a lot of conversations about what data was used to train a lot of these LLMs. I mean, that can be a whole episode in itself. So we're not going to deep dive into that. I think it's absolutely something that we'd like to cover in the future. And I think we'll probably try and get someone who's more knowledgeable about this topic on to discuss it because it's
This
really
is a
important to be aware.
this is a perfect example for an expert, right? So, again, we
Absolutely.
don't know everything. This is for someone a little bit more versed in this to come in and explain it to all of us, I think.
100%.
So when you ask that, I think this is kind of like an assistant, as Jess mentioned. So when you ask that assistant a question, it doesn't know the answer the way a person might. It's kind of playing a word guessing game. So it predicts the next word, then the next one, and eventually it builds a full response by spotting patterns in how language works based on the training data that it was given.
And it's all doing this incredibly quickly, like in the fraction of a second, which is why it feels like it's responding to you. But so, for example, when you ask it for a business plan, it's pulling in, the patterns that it's seen in thousands, millions of other business documents. So if you want marketing email, it's recreating what it's learned from a million other examples.
Yep. And the large language model, that LLM, that just means it's trained on a ton of data. Although the AI companies like OpenAI and Anthropic have not released how much data. And there are open source LLMs, which are also sometimes a little cagey about how much data, but it will kind of give you the amount of parameters that it's been trained on. But just know that it's an enormous mental library to draw from.
Yeah. So really, at the end of the day, we care about why it's important for your business. So why it matters for your business is that these LLMs are what power almost every AI tool that you'll encounter. So a lot of tools, what they don't want you to know is that they might position themselves as the next big thing, but they're actually just a wrapper for an existing LLM like ChatGPT. So if you understand that, it kind of gives you a better understanding of what tools to focus on and how you can use them effectively.
Yeah, and as we get into the differences between each of the tools, the reason for some of that difference is because of the data that it was trained on and because of the different approaches that were taken. Ultimately, these LLMs like ChatGPT, they're just a pattern-based generator trained on massive amount of text. So depending on what text was used to train it, is going to give you slightly different results or different strengths and weaknesses, which is really what we want to break into and talk about today. But let's actually talk about how you use it. So if you've already used ChatGPT, some of this might seem quite basic to you, but don't worry, we'll have some tips for you as well.
Yeah. And so part of the reason why ChatGPT became the first really viral LLM, viral AI tool, whatever you want to call it, is because it has a really easy to use chatbot interface. So you talk to it in a natural language way. So it feels like talking to a friend or talking to a therapist, which is, for better or worse, absolutely something that I know a lot of people do. But that's really its strength, is that it feels like you're talking to someone that you know. And it was just a really easy way of using it. You just go to chatgpt.com and you talk to it like you would anything else. And it could be really basic, but it could also be really complicated.
Yeah, and I know it's a kind of a very silly thing, but I feel like the genius of it, and maybe I'm just a simple person, but the genius of it was the streaming component of it. So it looked like it was actually saying a word each time. The UI was, I think, very clever, and that's, I think, added to the virality of it.
I
But
think you're right. Well, I think because it's the way that we naturally read things. So, like when someone sends you a text, that's kind of how you read it. Or like if someone's, writing you a message on Slack or something, I think it's just the way that we naturally, it felt very
yeah,
familiar to us, which is one of the reasons why it did so well.
which is very different from how you might use like an API, which is a little technical, but you send a
Yeah.
response or you send a question and you get a full response back, like a giant
Yeah,
paragraph, which just feels very computational. Whereas this was, again,
definitely.
we were talking to it. And then, you start adding in features like voice notes where I'm dictating to the LLM and it's dictating back. Now you really start to feel like you're having a conversation. So again, I think this ChatGPT and LLMs were very conversational. You don't need to be technical. And if it doesn't get it right the first time, you can kind of ask it to try again. You can make it simpler. You can change it. Now, there are ways to maximize what you get out of it. You can add roles, instructions, give it context to data and information about, what you've done, like the email chain you're trying to ask it about. This brings up a concept of prompt engineering, which we will eventually cover in the series.
Yeah, I know you feel very strongly about prompt engineering. You're probably better at it than I am as well. So it's definitely something that I think we'll aim to talk about it next week because it is so key to everything. But really, at the end of the day, like, why does this matter for you as a business owner or as a marketing person or as a freelancer? And it's really because LLMs, help you save time. All the things that we talked about on our episode last week, it gives you back your time, which at the end of the day is what a business person or a small business owner needs the most, is more time. And it gives you a starting point. And I think that that's a really important thing. Like sometimes half the battle with an email or with a business plan or whatever is you just don't even know where to start. Like that's my biggest issue, is sometimes you just get overwhelmed with, where do I even begin with writing this? And so that's, I think, one of its really key things is you don't have to go with its final version. And actually, you shouldn't go with the final version, but as a
Yeah.
starting point, it's great.
Yeah, it's like skipping the blank page, or you have that dread that you need to do something, but you're like, I'll just keep putting it off and procrastinate because I don't know where I'm going to begin. This accelerates that process. You still bring the strategy, the brand voice, hopefully not the judgment, but you're going to get there a lot faster. And if you're running lean, if you're trying to do more with less in your business, this can really help you. And as a business owner, you sometimes know where you want to get to, but again, you need that kind of initial step, and this provides it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's run through some real world business use cases, or so just some general use cases, so you can kind of get what we're talking about. And I know that this is something that Kyle and I have both seen a lot of, both personally and through other people that we've worked with. My personal favorite story is, and I swear this is real, it was so funny. I was on a train a couple months ago and there was some girl who was talking, it sounded like she was a student, something like that. And she said she had a really complicated legal document that she needed to understand. And so she put it into ChatGPT and asked it to explain it to her like it was gossip. And I just thought that was the best use case of ChatGPT that I'd ever heard, because it just makes it really understandable.
Yep.
Like, unless you're a lawyer, those legal documents, they're completely undecipherable. So this was just a really funny, interesting way of actually making that understandable.
It's great. I mean, if you think about it, what you're asking it to do is to break something down that's really complex and to give it back to you in a way that you want to hear it and that resonates with
Totally.
you. We all like to take in information differently, and this can basically adjust based on who you are and how you want to take in that information.
100%. Personally, I use it every week in my day-to-day role. I have to do a newsletter. And so I use it for summarizing articles all the time, because I have something like 20 articles that I need to condense down for this newsletter every week. And so being able to put them into Claude, which is my personal tool of choice, to help
Mm-hmm.
me condense that is an incredibly good use of time.
Yeah, the one that I use quite often, especially, if you're dealing with a lot of different, subjects within a business, and you're constantly context switching between, writing a legal document or sending a proposal or trying to code. It's a lot of context switching. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste an entire email chain into ChatGPT, every response for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll ask it to summarize, explain the email, the people, and any of the next steps. And sometimes I'll even get into, trying to understand the tone and what people are saying. So I understand, if someone maybe is a little more frustrated or if someone is looking for something, it can really get into the language well, because again, it's seen so many patterns and it can identify patterns within your own email. This might be an interesting one for people with meetings. Download the transcription of a Zoom meeting and have it explain the main talking points and identify any action points. There are a lot of tools that do this for you. So there's a lot of note taker apps. And, if you're attending a lot of Zoom meetings these days, I'm sure you're seeing them like Otter and Fireflies and all this
Yeah.
stuff.
And
But
actually, Google
sometimes,
has its own built-in one as well.
exactly. But sometimes, like we said, you may want it to take that transcript and give it to you in a way that you would like to understand it, like gossip. Give it your Zoom email.
Or the
But
really
some,
common one is explain it to me like I'm five. That's a good
yes,
one, which is
I literally
actually
that
very,
was
it works. It works really well.
that was exactly my next one. You took
Sorry,
the
I
words
jumped in,
out of my mouth.
literally. Yeah.
Yeah, but explain like I'm five an article, something that's really complex and technical, break down for me. Or, I'll give this one for some finance people. Take a full investor report, have it pull out key metrics, compare it to last quarter. I mean, you're talking about a lot of words, a lot of text, a lot of charts. It can basically give you like a 10 bulleted summary of everything you need to know.
Yeah.
So
I think.
think of these LLMs as your expert for any topic. Everyone uses it a little differently, as we've kind of identified. And some people I've noticed, like me, probably, do a really big prompt and they really want to be specific and they want to break all of these specific parts down. Some people just want to have a conversation. So ask it something
Mhm.
simple and then start asking follow-up questions, to each their own.
Yeah.
But
That's
it
actually
does
how
bring,
I use it more,
yeah,
is I'll ask it a pretty specific response originally, but then I'll just ask it to keep iterating to really get to the core of what I need it to respond to. So, however works best for you as an individual.
Yeah, and that's an important feature that, to explain really briefly, ChatGPT, and not all LMs, but ChatGPT and Cloud and a few others have a feature called memory, which allows it to remember key facts across conversations, and not just within the conversation. So you can remember your past projects, your
Mhm.
preferences, the way you speak to it to give you more personalized and consistent responses. And you can actually edit those and change those in your settings so you get what you want.
Yeah.
But not all LMs have what's called like persistent memory across chats, but all of them do have contextual windows. So it can remember within the chat, it can remember the last few messages. This depends on token limits, which we'll kind of get into when we start talking about, different ones. So if you've been wondering, where do I begin with AI? This is it. ChatGPT is the front door. It's really the most versatile, beginner-friendly tool out there.
Yeah, and once you start building confidence for the simple tasks, you'll start to see how it can support you. It's amazing how many more things you can think about using it for as you start to get into it. Like you might start by asking it to summarize meeting
Mm-hmm.
notes, but then it does really start to develop over time and you get an idea of what investor reports or whatever it is. But also that's something that we really hope to be able to give you some inspiration here, because I think that's
Mm-hmm.
also sometimes the hardest starting point is like, I don't even know what I should be asking it. So we will hopefully be able to give you some use
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah, and that's a bit of advice. It's so simple to start. Just start playing around with it. Go to chatgpt.com and start asking it questions, and that will help you build confidence.
Exactly. So now that we've explained what an LLM is, and that's really hard to say quickly, we're just going to give you a little breakdown of some of the other tools like Claude and Gemini, as they've all got their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, and so obviously we've already talked about ChatGPT, but it's the big one. It's the household name, the Swiss Army knife of AI, if you will, right?
I love
It's
that.
probably the one, sorry, Jess, it's probably the one you've heard of, but it's highly versatile. It's user friendly. We talked about it. It's really good at creative tasks, content generation. Jess might disagree, but I use it for a lot of this. But it is good for general business support. It has a broad ecosystem of plugins. It has some built-in data analysis tools. They really, after the aha moment, they've been really smart and clever in adding a lot more features to it so that you can use it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also worth mentioning that they are on a bit of an announcement and acquisition mission,
Mm-hmm.
shall we say. Like they've just announced some new coding tools. So they are really making a push for it to be even more useful across a really broad range of topics. I personally don't rate it for writing. I think it has a very specific style that
Mm-hmm.
sounds really AI generated, but that's just my personal opinion. But as a
Are you talking about the M dash, Jess?
I mean, look, I was using M dashes years before AI came along, so I'm actually really upset that M dash has become an AI thing. I'm actually talking about emojis. It
Oh
loves an
yes,
emoji. It will put an emoji on every bullet point if it possibly can.
the
But
rocket
yeah,
ship emoji is
it
having a
loves a
good
rocket ship
comeback.
emoji. But in general, like as Kyle said, it really is the most beginner friendly option. It's got the
Mm-hmm.
widest range of applications. Like it's a really, really strong starting
Yeah.
point. And it's free to try. There is a paid version, which is about $20 a month or pounds, whatever country you're in. Um, and that $20, that 20 amount will become pretty common. That's kind of the standardized amount for a
Yeah.
lot of these. Um, yeah, so there is a plus version which gets you access to some of their newer models, which are a little more knowledgeable, faster,
Mm-hmm.
etc. But yeah, just as a general all around tool to
Yep.
try, chat is a great starting point.
Yeah, I think Jess and I both talked about how tomorrow we're going to be doing a little bit of an AI audit and trying to remove as many of these $20 per month because
It
it
really
can
adds
rack up
up.
fast.
Oh,
Yeah, it
real
really
fast. Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT does have some quirks. None of these tools are perfect yet. One of the issues, it has a knowledge cutoff based on when it was trained, so it won't know about anything super recent. But you can use the web search, deep search, to fill that gap. Even on the free version, you do get, I think, like 5 questions a month or something like that. It can also get a little too confident, even when it's wrong. It can also, I think, sometimes ramble. And it also can be a little bit too confirming. So this is going to come up more and more. You talk and have more of a conversation, it might start to tell you you're awesome. And look, you are super awesome. That being said, what we're really looking at is for it to sometimes be challenging and to give us, more ideas
Yeah.
and to experiment and brainstorm. And you don't necessarily want to be telling you that everything you do is perfect and awesome. So you do have to sometimes check that and look out for guardrails around it. But it does have some really great features like memory, which we talked about, deep research, which allows you to accomplish complex tasks and synthesize into something useful. And this will take like 15 or 20 minutes. So you can leave, go make a coffee, come back, and boom, your deep research is done as if you had an analyst or do like competitive research, something like that. But yeah, it does have a lot of really interesting features.
Yeah, and this will always be the one that changed the game. Like, this is the one that made generative AI accessible to the masses. It was the tipping point. If you've never played around with this, or you have but you want to get a little bit deeper into it to try
Yep.
different tasks, ChatGPT is the
Yep.
one.
All right, we've talked about chat enough now.
I
Let's move
know,
on to some other
too much.
tools. So now we're going to talk about some of the other tools around there. The first one, we'll talk about Gemini. And we'll be a little bit quick on this one just because we're going to get into the Gemini announcement later. But if your business already runs on that Google ecosystem, this one's really worth paying attention to.
And you probably have already seen it if you use Google, because they do really love to force feed AI features to you, but they're generally pretty decent. Their note taking and actions from meetings and stuff is generally pretty good. Like, they've got a lot around research projects and data analysis and researching within your existing workspace. So if you use Drive, that's your own little kind of mini database that it can use. So it's a really obvious choice if you already work with Google. And again, we'll go way more into all the new features that they've announced, because they were actually kind of seen for a really long time as a little bit behind with all of this generative AI stuff. And all of that changed this week. They went a little crazy.
The next one up that we want to talk about is Claude from Anthropic. It's the one people are calling kind of the safe AI, built by Anthropic. It's really good at writing, editing, analyzing complex content. So that use case I said of giving it a full document and having it break down the components is really good at that for handling long documents and sometimes very like nuanced, context-rich conversations. All of the LLMs are getting better, but I noticed from the beginning, Claude was really good at solving that needle in the haystack problem, which is you're looking for something really specific in a document or from a conversation, and it can pull that out well. It's also known for being kind of having very ethical, safe outputs. This is where if you're trying to summarize legal documents, I would probably use Claude over ChatGPT.
Yeah, I would agree with that. As I mentioned earlier, I use Claude all the time. It's definitely my go-to for writing. You can do this with ChatGPT as well, but like for me personally, I just prefer its style. You can really make it sound like someone else. You can do a lot of training on, a specific voice, et cetera, et cetera. So I just find that particularly useful. For a long time, it wasn't connected to the internet, which made it not ideal for something like summarizing an article. You had to copy and paste an entire article into it for it to analyze it. It is now connected to the internet outside of the US. I think that was a US only feature for ages. So it's gotten better on that front. But yeah, from like personally, just from a writing perspective, it's kind of seen as the most superior. And I use it for coding too. I actually really trust its coding. It's very strong on that.
Agreed. I think one of the things that's important, and we will get into how to set an AI policy for your business. That's going to become an important thing. But one of the clear differences or something to think about is ChatGPT will train on the data that you give it. So if you're in a business and you're giving it sensitive documents, that could be problematic. Claude, as part of its usage policy, does not train on the data that you give it. So it can handle really sensitive content, and it's sometimes a lot better at following instructions. So if you're right now thinking, how do I use it tomorrow? Maybe not the best idea to start giving it ChatGPT your sensitive documents and materials. Go use Claude because they won't actually train on your information. And this is both for the free and paid plans. ChatGPT has a Teams version that won't train, but that's $30 a month.
Yeah. Again, Claude they all have similar tiered pricing plans. So you can try it out on the free version. If you love it, then you subscribe. Let's move on to Perplexity. So Perplexity is one that we talked about last week. And it's really the fact checker of the LLMs. It's kind of specifically aimed at research. It's got really strong capabilities for providing answers with citations and source transparency, which some of the other ones are not as strong at. So if you think of it like an AI powered search engine that kind of shows its work, and they also have deals with legitimate media outlets, so it's going to be a little more accurate, I would say, although obviously always double check any AI generated output. Perplexity is my go-to for research. If you want more on a topic, or you want, you have one thing that you've kind of been looking into and you want to get a whole bunch of more information. I mean, there was a white paper where we ended up getting something like 70 cited resources within the last 18-month period, which was just a godsend because it meant that we didn't have to go away and do that. And they were all legitimately good resources. So this is definitely, Perplexity is like, love it for the research side of things.
I know you love this one. I know you've kind of been holding the flag on Perplexity and
I have.
probably
I tell so many people about Perplexity.
you really encouraged me to use it more. So that's great. Yeah, it's great with current information with citations you can trust. So I think if your work depends on like truth and traceability, this might be your go-to. And then we're going to talk about one last one. So stick with us here. But this one is DeepSeek. And this
Actually, we've got
is
two left. We've got
two
two,
more. Okay, sorry.
but we'll be quick.
DeepSeek
These are quick.
is DeepSeek is kind of the underdog here and made a lot of headlines recently. It's, known for being super cost effective, but don't let the price tag fool you. It does punch way above its weight. They did some very clever things to increase its performance. But it's great with, basic coding, structured outputs, logic heavy tasks. So think math problems, budget breakdowns, or any kind of rule-based analysis.
Yeah, but the user interface is still a little clunky and it doesn't really have the polish or the name recognition of some of the bigger tools. So it's a lot of people use it, but it's generally not on the top of most people's lists.
Yeah. But if you're experimenting or building something custom, DeepSeek might be a good way to use it for relatively cheap. Now there's, again, going back to the headlines, we're not going to go into today. There's a lot around that and we won't get into it, but definitely use it and think about it in kind of the cost-effective version.
Totally. And there's one more.
Here we go. Yep, last one.
We won't spend too long on it. The last one is Grok, and it's different, shall we say? Elon Musk's AI platform that it lives on the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. We refuse to call it by its current name. It is dead to us. If anyone is even still using Twitter, because that's, a big question mark.
Throwing some shade, Jess.
I feel very strongly about it. I was a big fan of Twitter back in the day, and it really pains me to see what it's become. I loved it.
But what it is good at is real-time social insights, on the users that are still there.
With limitations, I would say.
That's fair. But it taps directly into, sorry, Jess, X, formerly known as Twitter, the fire hose. So it's kind of the only model that can tell you what's trending right now.
Yeah. But it's definitely not. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and like everything X-related, it does have some perks. We have to acknowledge that. So it's a little bit of a less structured environment and fewer kind of traditional use cases.
Definitely some brand safety issues around that, as there are with a lot of social media platform formerly known as Twitter related to conversations. But it's really not built for business workflows or research or like writing, like any of the things that we've been talking about. It's more kind of for staying ahead of memes, although again, like, because it's a limited look, I don't need to go into why I don't like it, but it's a limited pool. And, what is a meme on Twitter is not necessarily a meme in the wider world. So it is just a more limited, it's a big fish in a small pond, shall we say.
Right. Yeah. So that brings us to kind of a good summary here. Let's talk about your decision framework, right? Don't try to use all of these tools. You really need to look at your primary business needs. So let's give some examples. So if you're deep in the Google workspace, start with Gemini. If you handle lots of documents, maybe legal documents, white papers, complex tasks, try Claude or Claude. If you want the most versatile beginner option, as we talked about, go with ChatGPT. If budget is your main concern or you want to do some experimentation, try DeepSeek. They're not interchangeable. Think of them kind of like different employees with their strengths and weaknesses, as we identified. Each has their specialty. So, and once you find the right one for your workflow, trust me, regardless of the one you use, you're going to get a massive productivity uplift.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Claude and I'm going to ask it how it pronounces its own name, and that will be the decision maker.
Yeah.
But again, like the really key insight to all these foundational models is that they power a lot of the other tools that are out there. So it's worth getting familiar with all of them just to kind of understand when you're looking at any other tool or solution that you're going to be coming across when you're looking for these things.
Well, so that wraps up our discussion of LLMs and how to use it. Now let's get into some practical applications and let's talk about what you told us you actually need help with.
That's right. So after episode one, we ran a LinkedIn poll asking what work tasks you hated the most and what would you would love for AI to take over. And the results were really enlightening, and they kind of connect perfectly to what we were just talking about with LLMs.
Yeah, so I'll go in through the data side. Content creation came at 14%. The one that I mentioned, slides and decks, at 29%. So that was second. That was solid. Endless emails at 0%. I'm not sure if you guys were being honest on that one. I'm a little surprised,
I'm surprised by that one too.
right? But the overwhelming winner was boring admin tasks at 57%. So that's a super popular one. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so more than half of you are drowning in endless admin work, and so that's exactly what these LLMs are perfect for, like helping you out with these sort of boring admin tasks that you really hate doing.
Yeah, and I'm going to take a guess and maybe say that has to do with your confidence around AI and LLMs, maybe where we are on that early adoption curve. Because if I think about it, admin tasks are typically low risk but high impact, right? They save us a lot of time. But if an AI messes up your social media post, that could be more than just annoying. That could potentially be
Yeah.
reputation damaging. So maybe you don't trust it yet to do that. But if you help it organize your filing system or summarize an email, and it gets it 90% right, that's still a huge time saver, but not worrying, if you will.
Yeah, and admin's also a really good confidence builder for when you're just starting out with this. Like you
Mhm.
can start with the tasks that you don't love anyway. You see pretty immediate results, and then you kind of build that trust. And then you can start moving on to some of the more strategic applications where it really shines. But you just kind of build that familiarity before you jump into the really heavy stuff.
So let's connect this to our tool breakdown. We've given you lots of examples. We think you can solve a lot of your admin tasks with some of the tools that we've talked about.
So, on to our AI news that matters for this week. And this week we are talking about Google. They had something like 100 features announced this week. So, we're not going to go into absolutely everything, but we're going to give you a high level recap of what they talked about and why it's potentially, not even potentially, why it's big news for small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Yep, exactly. Google I/O 2025 just concluded. And as Jess alluded to, I'm not exaggerating when I say this could be the most important event for small businesses since the ChatGPT moment back in 2022. Google has essentially democratized AI capabilities and given small businesses enterprise level AI that maybe was only available to Fortune 500 companies before.
Yeah, and this is not only is this just an enormous announcement, but it's something that's really close to both Kyle and my heart. It's one of the reasons why we started Early Adopter to help make this sort of thing more accessible for everyone. And also, we started a whole nother business about 5 years ago doing exactly this. So this is really exciting for us to be reading about.
Yeah. But let's start with the foundation. So remember Gemini from our tool breakdown before? Google just launched its 2.5 version of Gemini, and the capabilities are staggering. The free tier is now incredibly powerful, so you can just use that. There's the $20 per month version, as with all tools.
Love a $20 a month.
But there's also the $250 AI Ultra for superpower users. But most small businesses will thrive on the free tier. And I think the biggest headline is that the 1.5 Pro version for $20 a month can handle 1 million tokens of context. I won't dig into the technical details of that, but think about this is it allows for a lot of that memory that we talked about within a conversation to be massive. So you can feed it your entire sales book. You can feed it your entire marketing plan with all of your marketing documents. You can feed it not just one legal document, but all of them. So, and it can then reason across all of it in one go. But I think some of the tools that, we're not going to talk about all 100, but we're going to hit a couple of the big ones. So the AI mode in search, this is rolling out to all US users. So instead of traditional search on Google, you can have conversations about your business challenges. Some of you have probably already seen this, but it does allow you to also connect your Gmail for personalized business insights. There's Google Meet translation. So this is real-time speech translation. So when you're out traveling, you can use this. Or if you're dealing with an international business partner, you can start conversing with them without the language barriers.
Really cool.
For content creation, you can use Google Flow for it's your new AI filmmaking tool. Or if you want a product demo showing, a small business owner explaining the software benefits of X, Y, and Z product, Flow can create that video for you. So that's kind of cool.
It's really exciting. It's like in my day-to-day role, I deal a lot
Mm-hmm.
with connected TV advertising, and that's a real barrier to entry for the smaller businesses
Yep.
because there are tools out there, there's, platforms out there like Hulu that allow small businesses to advertise
Mm-hmm.
on their platform, but the really big barrier is that most smaller businesses can't afford a TV spot. So this is a really interesting way to
Mm-hmm.
remove that barrier to entry, and maybe we'll start to see some smaller businesses showing up on some of the connected TV spaces, which is really very exciting.
And two more tools from me, one of which is the Gemini Live. So now you can talk to AI in real time and it can see your screen. So imagine you're building a website or you're writing a proposal. This will basically stream AI and show you like a step by step. So it can be like your tech savvy co-founder, it can be your marketing expert that's looking at what you're writing and what you're doing all from your browser. And then the last one I'll talk about is the agent mode. It's coming soon. This is where you can delegate really complex tasks like find me an affordable event space for 50 people next month. And the AI handles the entire research process, booking, scheduling, sending out notifications, everything. We're going to talk more about agents in the future. It's a big buzzword for 2025, but just know that Google now has a very powerful tool for it.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So, from my perspective, one of the announcements that I'm particularly excited about is their new AI mode shopping integration, which, if you are a small business who sells products on the internet, you are an e commerce business, particularly clothing, this is super exciting. They've got things now like a virtual try on technology, which allows you to see what the clothes would look like once you're actually, when you're looking to order them. So that's just really, it's really cool. It kind of is a step further from the AI enabled shopping features that we talked about last week with ChatGPT and Perplexity. It's kind of going to make that commerce flow even more seamless, which is really at the end of the day what gets people to buy from you. And then, like we were talking about earlier, if you're already using Google Workspace, there's a lot of new integrations that they've announced. So there's going to be automated email management, there's document drafting, workflow automation. You'll probably notice these almost immediately if you haven't noticed them already, because these features have already been rolled out. Some of them will be coming out over the next couple of months, but it's a huge announcement. We really can't overstate how important this announcement is for small businesses.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Jess, which is, and I would sum it up in terms of accessibility. So
Mm.
just like the ChatGPT moment where it made something that's quite complex really easy for us all to use, the Google's announcement is now going to make all of these tools really, really accessible. So whether it's try-on technology, video creation, that real-time translation, all the way to automated coding, all of this now becomes really easy because it all exists within the Google ecosystem. A lot of tools that maybe only Fortune 500 companies could afford or access or knew how to use.
Totally. I mean, you really have to think about it. Like, I don't think that we are exaggerating when we say that this is like the internet. It's like we're in 1994 and this is the dawn of the internet again, right? So, like, businesses that didn't have websites at that point in time were behind the times. And this is really like we're at that tipping point again. It's really, anyone who adopts these sorts of tools now are just going to be massively ahead of the game going
Mm-hmm.
forward. So
Yeah.
that actually brings us nicely onto our next feature, which is real world success stories. We actually don't have one to talk about yet, but this is our call out for people because we do want to have your success stories to talk about. It's something that we obviously love sharing examples. As we said earlier, it's all about inspiration. We
Mm-hmm.
want to give you ideas about how you can use AI to benefit your business. And so we, in particular, I think based on our poll results, we'd love to hear some admin tips and some ideas on how to make your life a little less admin heavy.
Yeah, we're looking for the practical stuff. So the meeting summaries that used to take 30 minutes or an hour that now are taking 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Anything that from our examples or from, identifying use cases in your life that you want to share with us.
So whether you save 2 hours a week or 20 hours a week, we want to hear about it. What problem were you facing? What tool did you use to solve it? What were your results? If you email us at hello@earlyadopter.ai, and then remember there's no E in adopter, we'll feature you on an episode going forward because we really want to hear your stories.
Yeah, we'll keep it anonymized. Don't worry, unless you want us to call you out,
Unless you
and we're
want
happy
it,
to do so.
we are happy to promote your business.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so let's move to our favorite cautionary segment, AI gone wrong. I got a lot of feedback that people love this segment, so we're going to keep doing this one.
Excellent, because it's my favorite.
Exactly, me too. This week's story comes from the Chicago Sun-Times, and I think it starts to connect to a pattern we're seeing over and over again.
Yeah, so essentially, they printed an AI generated summer reading guide that includes books that don't exist, which sounds pretty familiar to our story from last week when we talked about Coca-Cola inventing a book in a recent ad campaign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but here's what makes this story, I think, really important for all of you, for small businesses as you work, and if you think about when you're working with vendors. So this article wasn't even created by the Chicago Sun-Times. It was created by King Features, a subsidiary of Hearst, and sold as a newspaper insert.
Yeah, so they actually didn't review the content because it came from what they thought was a reputable publisher. So it's, once again, you always, always,
Mm-hmm.
always have to double check your AI generated output.
Yeah, we talked about this last time, this idea about AI hallucinations. This example of AI gone wrong starts to reveal something deeper than just the hallucinations. This is actually about organizational AI policies. Who owns quality control when AI content is involved in your supply chain, from the different vendors you're using to the distribution of that content?
Yeah, and you really have to think about it from a business perspective because if you get this sort of thing wrong, it can cause reputational damage. I mean, the Chicago Sun-Times, which is supposed to be a legitimate source of news,
Mm-hmm.
has really taken a reputational hit for this. So we just can't emphasize how important that it is for this. So we've got a couple of really actionable takeaways from this one. Never publish AI content without human review. Period.
So
Like, I
important.
don't care if it looks perfect. You always, always have to have a human verifying factual information,
Mm-hmm.
especially something that is public facing.
Second, create clear AI usage policies for your team. Um, Probably most people in your business, your employees, are using AI in some fashion. So everyone should know and kind of have an understanding of what AI can be used for within the business, what requires approval. So if something's going to go out to a customer or it's going to be published, have policies around that, and make sure that you have the verification steps before something goes out.
Third, if you're outsourcing content creation or other services, ask vendors directly about their AI usage and quality control processes. Don't assume they've got the same standards as you, even if that's something like an agency, because really an agency should have caught that Coca-Cola mistake and they didn't. So, you got to check your vendors or have this conversation with your vendors.
Like we talked about in the tool review, AI is incredibly good at sounding confident. It wants to give you the answer.
Yeah.
It's optimized for giving you an answer, not necessarily the right answer. So you don't want to learn this the hard way.
No, and as Kyle mentioned, we're going to dedicate a full episode to AI policies because getting it wrong can really, cause some pretty major issues. So the short version is AI is a powerful tool, but humans are still responsible for the output.
And I think the broader lesson applies to any business. Establish clear guardrails, maintain human oversight, and never let, and this is a good little line right here, never let efficiency override accuracy, especially when your reputation is on the line.
So I think
Go
we're
ahead,
going to be a little
Jess.
unpopular. Well, I was just going to say, I think we're going to be a little unpopular here and we're going to give you some homework. We want you to pick one challenge and actually try it this week, not next month. Now is the time. So we want you to pick one LLM from our breakdown today and test it with a really simple admin task. So if you're already in Google Workspace, try Gemini for meeting notes. If you handle a lot of documents, try Claude. If you want to just give ChatGPT a go and see how you get on, that's the one to start with. And remember, it's okay for it to not be perfect on the first try. You're probably not going to get it perfect on the first try, and you're going to have to practice, and that's okay. Practice makes perfect. Keep iterating. We will have our conversation next week about prompting, which is super important for really getting the most useful information out of the AI. But don't worry if you don't get it right or it doesn't give you exactly what you want. Keep having the conversation with it.
In fact, I'd love to hear those stories. So email us your results, even if it didn't work well, and maybe why it didn't work well. We'll feature the best implementations in the next episode, and maybe we'll go through some examples of what didn't work and why, and help everyone kind of solve some of those issues.
That's right. So that's a wrap for episode 2.
Woo-hoo.
There's one key takeaway from today. It's that the tool selection is the foundation for your AI success.
And you don't need to understand every technical detail or use every available tool. And as you get more confident over time, you can start doing more complex things and hopefully get to a place where you're doing some really interesting stuff.
Next week, we're going to be diving into Prompt Engineering 101, which will help you get the best out of these tools, because knowing which tool is only half the battle.
Yeah, and we'll start testing some of these new Google features as well. Everything is super new, but we're testing in the background, and we'll report back with some real world results and maybe some tips on how you can get using it in the workspace if you're not sure how to get started.
If this episode helped you cut through the AI confusion, hype, and jargon, please subscribe to Early Adopter wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Amazon Music, all those places. Mm-hmm. And please share with your fellow entrepreneurs or small business owners who you think could benefit from this.
Yeah, send us your results. Send us your success stories. We're going to read every single message. We've been just super excited about the feedback and the outpouring. So keep sending us all your information.
Thank you for listening to Early Adopter, where we help make AI your unfair advantage. And until next time, keep innovating and stay curious.
Yeah, and remember, you don't need to master everything. You just need to master one thing and start there. So from both Jess and I at Early Adopter, we'll see you next week.